Right.
There you go. Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for turning up. And let's see, have we got any apologies?
Yes, we have, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Townsend. I do believe Councillor Whitcott is intending on joining, so we're just trying to call him in again, but he might be joining a bit later.
Right.
Chair, unfortunately, I have to leave at 11 o'clock. I've got to chair a charity, and it's been long-standing for about 20 years. This actual date, second Monday in December. So apologies for that.
Well, I don't think we've got a tremendous amount to talk about today. Perhaps we'll be closed by 11. You never know.
Good.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I suppose first thing to do is go to the minutes. Yeah. Can we get the minutes up on the screen? No, we probably can't. Okay. Well, if we go through the minutes page by page, we all set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Any anything to challenge on the first page?
Nope.
No. All content. Second page. All content?
Yeah.
Lovely. Third page.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Next page. Yeah. Again, next whatever the next page is. Yeah. I think we've got a dozen pages of this lot, haven't we, more or less? And let's see. Okay, then the next page again. All happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the next page. Mark's joined us now. And again, the next page. The next page again. And the next page. That brings us up close to the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's us at the end, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, then. Well, then I'll I usually call upon Mr. Price if he's about to bring us up to down to the next presentation. Yeah, well, do I need somebody to vote these as an accurate?
Yeah, if you just want to move and resolve to adopt those minutes as a true record, Chair.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Are we all happy? Have I got an adopter? Thank you. Yeah, we are. Thanks very much. I think I've got James and Phil there have proposed in a second, so they're a true and accurate record. Okay, right. So Gareth, could you explain the first item to us, please?
Well, Leanne will take you through this. The next item is a presentation on where we are with the participation and engagement strategy. So Leanne will take you through this.
Yeah, yeah.
Morning, Chair, morning, committee. So I do have a presentation today to give you an update on the development of the participation strategy, which we've discussed before. Just try and share my slides for you. Are you able to see my slides at the moment?
No, not at the moment. I can't.
No.
No.
Just try again. Apologies. How about now?
Yeah, that's us.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks, Chair. Okay, so as I've just said, this is an update on our participation strategy, the development of this, which is required under the Local Government and Elections Act to be published ready for May next year. So the purpose of my presentation today is to share where we are now with the aims and actions of the draft strategy and open that up for any comments to the committee. So just a bit of a reminder, strategy is required under the new legislation, and what we need to do is encourage our residents to participate in local government decision making and then publish our strategy that sets out how we do that. So a brief reminder of the key requirements. So we need to promote awareness of the council's functions to the public. So what we do, how we do it, promote how to become a member or elected councillor, support greater access to information for our residents, and provide ways for members of the public to make representations to us in different ways, which we'll cover later in the presentation. And lastly, to promote awareness of the benefits of using social media by members of the council. So we did have a timeline that we're working to, which we've shared with the committee previously. So we're in December, we're running through the draft consultation. What I was going to ask Chair, perhaps we could discuss this at the end, is if I could come back towards the end of January with a full draft document to run through prior to that consultation period in Feb. After consultation, the full strategy and any feedback from residents will then be presented to council in March and ready for that May deadline of publication. So if we go back to the first requirement of the strategy, so promoting awareness of the council's functions to the public. So this is about sharing information about the council's functions and services, and this supports the public to be aware of that prior to us asking them to make any decisions or recommendations as part of consultation. So that is the aim that we're looking at. What we already have, we have some strong things in place already that supports that. So we have our corporate plan and associated strategies. They're publicly available through the website. The council website also has lots of information about the services that the council provides. We have the modern.gov section, which is our democracy section of the website. So our residents can access agendas and minutes of any meetings or look up any decisions that are going to be made or have been made. Newport Matters is our newsletter. This is already sent to all households in Newport, and again, residents can access the newsletter online. We have our council cabinet meetings, scrutiny committees and so forth. Again, they're all available online and residents can access those if they so wish. We also have our social media channels, so the council, Twitter and Facebook, which again, we do share information about what we do and how we do it. So further actions that would be included as part of the strategy would be around publishing a guide to the democratic process. So this would be an accessible guide for residents to look at the constitution, so how we work as a council, how decisions are made, what the structure is in terms of the meetings and the decision-making process. That information is already available. So the change here would be around drawing it together as one piece of work so that it's easy to read and residents can access that in one place. Another action under this part of the strategy would be around improving the council website so that it is easier to access the information, so improvements on the search facility and so forth, just to make it that bit easier to look at. And also around ensuring the council's forward plan supports public engagement. That's built into everything that we do by being accessible, timely and user friendly. The second part of the legislation that we're looking at then is around promoting how to become a member of the council. So the aim for this is around encouraging people to become councillors, so representing the people in their own community and representative of different viewpoints that inform decisions that benefit everyone. Again, we do have a strong baseline to build on from here. So again, the website, council and democracy pages. We've also got the Become a Councillor page, so that is available on the internet. There's lots of information there, and it also links through to the WLGA's page around becoming a counsellor, how to do that and what it's like in the day-to-day life of counsellors. We have our full training curriculum that supports members. That is obviously something that we're building on ready for May next year, but it's also around supporting counsellors through their term of office. We have regular seminars for members, so this is around supporting members to make sure they're updated and engaged on developments and they're cited on things before they happen and as they happen as well. Allowances for members are posted on the council website, so making sure that the public understands that if they were to become a counsellor, there is remuneration and how that is supported. We have our strategic equality plan and objectives, so under leadership, governance and involvement. Part of that is around making sure there's strong leadership and clear governance around equality, that we have robust monitoring processes and meaningful stakeholder engagement. And we also have our role descriptions for members that are published as part of the Constitution. So building on that, the actions that we would implement further would be around implementing our hybrid meetings. So this is around making sure that any counsellor can access and attend a meeting. Don't necessarily have to be in the chambers. They just need a Wi-Fi or an internet connection to be able to do that. The second action that we would be looking at under this section would be around ensuring that information for potential counsellors is available and fit for purpose. So a good example of this is promotion of the Access to Elected Office for Disabled People Fund that is able to support people that may wish to become counsellors. The third part of the strategy aims to encourage and enable everyone affected to be involved in decisions, and making sure that they're included in opportunities to engage, whether that's on an individual basis or part of a group or a community. The base that we've already got that we can build on here, again, website, modern.gov. We also have our consultations and surveys, so they quite often run on public Wi-Fi as well, so people can access them on the bus services or in public buildings around Newport. Newport Matters. We've also got the One Newport Partnership Bulletin. So this provides regular updates and helps to create that transparency, engagement and involvement that we're looking for. As a council, we also use data to inform our proposals. So this can sometimes be from external sources and partners where appropriate, but also based on the data that we hold internally as well. And we do work closely with our partners to share information about residents and make decisions more effectively. Lastly, the council also works with community groups to ensure that there is a range of information shared and also a range of different viewpoints that are heard as well. So further actions for this section again would be around that improvement of the council website, ensuring that the council's forward plan is accessible, timely and user friendly. Apologies, I've lost the ability to move the slide. Apologies, won't be a second. Oh, there we are. So the fourth section of the strategy that we're looking at, the aim here is around that focus on participation. So making sure that it's about more than getting people's views on a specific issues. So participation being embedded in what we do, encouraging people to take part and using different approaches and methods of engagement other than, waiting for the consultation to happen. So again, lots of the things that we already have are things that we've already talked about here. So the website, we've also got our range of digital forms. So that gives us some really good information about what services customers are accessing. We have the comments, compliments and complaints policy, which supports customers to give us feedback. Our consultations and surveys, then we've got Newport Matters and modern.gov. Newport Matters often contains information about consultations and surveys and how to get in touch with the council to give feedback as well. One Newport, the partnership there that really facilitates feedback and input from the citizens panel. They also do work with children and young people and then that opens up to the general public as well. And as a council, we do work with community groups to ensure that information about decisions is shared. The last thing we have here is around a petition scheme. So this is around further actions as well. So under the Local Government and Election Act, there is a requirement to have a petition scheme in place. So this will formalise how residents can submit petitions, and then also as a council how we would consider those and what we would do once we've received that petition. We also will provide regular reports on comments received from residents. There's already reports on compliments and complaints, so that's already embedded as part of our governance. But that other feedback from residents is something that we would look to make more use of going forward. The third action on this section is around developing a better understanding of the demographics of our residents who regularly provide that feedback, so that we can understand if there are any gaps in representation and then take appropriate action to try and remedy that. The last section then under the strategy is around promoting awareness of the benefits of social media to members of the council or by members of the council. So the aim of this is the recognition of the importance of social media in the public space. So it's somewhere that councillors can share public information and engage with other councillors. It's also a place that officers and residents can be supported. So it's about, having that focus as a helpful tool for engagement without forgetting that, other methods of communication are also just as valid. So we already have social media channels in place for the council, and I know that there are some councillors already engaged via social media as well. The WLGA has guidance for new councillors, so improving digital citizenship. They've got some studies and some guidance available there. So for our next steps and further actions, we would include that as part of our member induction and training and focus more around member seminar on the topic as well. So in terms of bringing the strategy to completion, the next steps would be around the design and formatting. So, making it look like the kind of strategy we would like to publish to the public. We would also do then the public consultation present to council. But as I mentioned, Chair, I wonder if it'd be worth bringing back the fully realised document with the formatting and design back to the committee in January. And other than that, that's the conclusion of my presentation, Chair.
What's the committee's feelings about seeing the returned document? All in favour of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so all happy. Yeah. I must admit, I found the sort of schematic layout of the presentation very easy to follow. I like that. I thought that was a good innovation. Would you agree with that? The rather than have a page of text, it was all yeah, easy to follow, laid out. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That may say more about my intellectual grasp of things than anything else, but I thought it was very business-like, very sensible. Yeah, so yeah, yes, we would be happy to see the.
Chair, can I just make a few words? Sorry, I clicked on the hand. I was doing the wrong way around. Yeah, I think it's an excellent report. It's really great to to see this developing. I was just sort of want to reiterate, and I know it's all been taken into account, but promotion is good, but it's how the language that you use to get to everybody, so I know you'll have taken that into account, but that's so important, isn't it? Because wording can put people off just as much as it may encourage people or confuse people. So I was just wondering how much what has been included in this from actual public comments, where you've got those from, suggestions about how websites and that sort of thing could be improved? I don't know if you've got a couple of examples of that. I mean, it's, you know, it's just good to hear, you know, what's been provided to us, or people have contributed towards it. And I just wondered what other local authority exemplary practice, if you like, we've taken into account and nicked their ideas with any luck. I think the petition scheme is good to develop that. And of course, social media. Well, I mean, Newport has led the way with Welsh Local Government Association with Baroness Wilcox, and I work closely with her on that, you know, to develop that strategy, because at that time, you know, we were discovering, you know, just how not only beneficial but detrimental to councillors social media can be. So it's I think it's all really good. It's an excellent report and presentation. I think the you know, the development is exciting, but I just wanted a little picture of what we've taken into account from the public, which would be nice. Not everything, I'm sure, just some examples, and how this aligns with other local authorities, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so in terms of the website, there's some clever stuff embedded in the website itself that will tell you what residents are looking at, where they go, you know, if they are following a process through, do they drop out of it? So that's really useful to look at in terms of what might be working and what isn't working. I don't think we have it on the website at present, but there's often something that comes up and asks you what your visit was like for that day. So did you find what you needed, that kind of thing. So that's really helpful too. And also customer services are regularly running surveys, by regularly, probably annually, but they also request feedback from customers and residents on what is working and what isn't in terms of that digital service provision. So that will all be considered as part of the website development. We could potentially consider, you know, other consultations as part of that as well. That could be developed too. And in terms of what other local authorities are doing, they're all in the same position as we are in terms of developing a strategy ready for May next year. So whilst there is some discussions going on and working groups around that, I think this is sort of the first stage of publishing our strategy. And then what we hope as a local authority is we'll have that in place and then improve and develop that as we go on as well.
Thank you. It's good to hear. I mean, I know there's cooperation going on all the time, and everyone will have different ideas, and of course there's slightly different circumstances, but that's the important thing, isn't it, to be gathering all of that before, you know, as you're developing it. Yeah. Sorry,
Chair, before someone else, just to add to what Leanne has just said, and following up from what Councillor Giles has said, this strategy is intended as some sort of live or dynamic document. It's a starter, if you like. You probably understand more when Leanne brings the final document to you in terms of how it's set out. But you know, this just formalises what we do now. But with the plan itself, the idea is that you keep it constantly under review. And what you can add then is actions and improvements that you can make then over a period of time. So picking up on Councillor Giles's point, I think it's once you've got the strategy in place, then you can work with the public to actually improve the way in which you communicate with them. You know, whether it's improving the access to this information via the website or any other means of communication. So this is very much your start of a 10, if you like, in terms of codifying or documenting what we do now. Obviously, the first step will be consulting with the public in January, February, in terms of what they think of this as a strategy. But once it's adopted prior to next May, the next stage then is to use it as a document then for improving the way in which you communicate. So I think going forward, you can list some key actions, and this committee in particular can then oversee as part of the work programme how we're delivering those actions and improvements. So this is your start of a 10. As Leanne said, the other councils are probably in the same position as we are. What they're trying to do is document what they already do. And then come next May, they can sort of review where they are, so regroup, if you like, and then set a series of improvement targets and actions that they can all use then to improve the way in which they communicate with the public.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gareth, and thank you, Chair. And that's I won't keep talking, but just to say it comes back to that language, doesn't it, in communication, where we think we're setting something out that makes sense and is our everyday use of language, whereas for the public, it may not, in the way it's set out. So that constant feedback, as you said, Gareth, has got to be got to be a good thing. Thank you.
Fine. So look forward to the worked up report.
So Councillor Whitgift has indicated in the chat box. I don't know whether you got the chat box open, Chair, but Councillor Whitgift has shown his wish to speak.
I got Trevor Watkins first, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, you're quite right. Sorry, Chair.
Pardon me, Trevor. Sorry.
Two things. Leanne mentioned about implementation in May. Gareth, you just said that now it's prior to May. So am I taking it before the elections?
It has to be adopted before May. So we will need to take this to a council meeting before next May.
Okay. The other question is the website. I have continual complaints about the website as it's too complicated to operate, to find things on it. So I'd be very interested when that comes out in regards to the consultation. So, you know, even if you get all the, consultation documents in one area, all the meetings and minutes in another area and so on. So it'd be easy for people to negotiate the council website. But, you know, I'll be interested when this consultation comes out, and obviously the people will be making representation on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you, Trevor. Now we've got Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Trevor about the website. It often is easier to Google something to try and look it up than to actually try and put a search on the website itself. And David May has been raising this issue for years, and yet we're still basically stuck with the same website that we had sort of in about 2005 or 2008 or something like that. But anyway, that's not really the point of what I intended to raise. The actual point is that I thought it was very good, the presentation, by the way, if I can say that through the chair to Leanne, and yeah. I'm sure it is the right approach to adopt. So I very much welcome that, and also the fact that this is an excellent starting point. The only thing I would say, just in terms of the language, and I agree with Gail that it is crucially important, as far as the language is concerned, is that one of the things that you did actually mention is you said that that it would explain the council's constitution to the public, and I think we have to be careful there, because I think even as local politicians that many of us would are sort of really cautious about getting involved in constitutions and that kind of thing, because it's a good way to just get people to switch off. And lawyers may be interested in constitutions, but I don't think anybody else is. And so I think it comes down just I appreciate what you're saying, that you have to explain basically the way that it operates and what the rules are, and you know, the sort of base rules that have to apply. But I think it's crucially important that a great deal of care is taken as to how that is done, and that it's the same theme really as both Gail and Trevor have highlighted, that it has to be user friendly. So I think it's important, as somebody who's not going to be on the council after the next election, for our successors, or my successors, that for them that it needs to be user friendly, which is a difficulty at the moment.
Thank you. Now, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm going to agree with Trevor, Gail and Mark. The website is not user-friendly. Funny enough, this morning, I've got about 10 emails about residents' parking permits and how impossible it is to try and do them online. And I guess if we're talking about simplicity, if you wanted to watch the last council meeting, for instance, and you tried to search and go onto our site, you've got to go onto YouTube instead. There's no direct link to the last council meeting. And I think when I did manage to find it, there were like 34 people who watched it. So half of those probably would have been councillors or a few officers watching it. So, you know, I don't think we are particularly good at engaging with the public. And what I'd like to see is, you know, you said we're all in the same boat about things like petitions, but we used to have a scheme for petitions years ago. We did offer it up. Well, we did, Gareth, because I can remember receiving petitions at the Civic Centre from groups when it was concerns about travellers or there are other petitions and things. So there was a mechanism in place to deal with petitions. And what I'd like to see is, you know, we always talk about a little bubble in Wales, but surely there's, you know, in Scotland, Northern Ireland or in England, there must be other councils who are engaging with the public when it comes to things like petitions. So it's not something new. Petitions have been around for ages. The Welsh Government has a petitions committee. So, you know, I don't think we should be, what I'd like to have seen today was some research of potential other councils and what they've been doing, because it is one of the ways that the public do get frustrated when they do sign a petition and they find, well, it just goes into some black hole. So I would like to see more information on that when the report comes back in January, and I would like to find easier ways. But I do recognise that ultimately, you know, if you have an emotive subject like the Public Space Protection Order, what did we have? Consultation, about 100 responses out of a population of 150,000 people. So yeah, I do think we need to do more, make it simpler, and I would be interested to hear your views about petition schemes potentially around the UK, because we did have them, Gareth. I can assure you.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just to come back to Councillor Evans on that one. I wasn't shaking my head because of that. We didn't have, what we had was a policy as to how petitions would be presented. We never had a strategy in terms of how those petitions were actually responded to or dealt with. Because previously, if you remember, petitions used to be presented physically in full council to the mayor, and we decided that was inappropriate. So what we had in place was just a procedure, if you like, for how petitions should be presented outside of council. What we don't have, and this is absolutely right, that we do need to develop as part of this strategy, this engagement strategy, is a policy in terms of how those petitions are responded to. And how we keep a record to ensure that those petitions are dealt with properly. But coming back to what we said about that and the website, those are improvements going forward. What we're trying to do in this document is just codify or document what you currently do. But as part of the final document, what you can then do as a committee is agree some actions or improvements going forward. Now, one of the actions that we've already flagged up is that if the website will be a key plank of your communication strategy with the public, and therefore, if the public can't access that website, if they find that search engine difficult to navigate, then that's a key improvement that we have to make in terms of how that website operates. So that will be a key improvement going forward. And again, picking up on Matthew's point, we need to improve the way in which we deal with and respond to petitions. Now, obviously, we've moved on in terms of how we receive them, because we can receive petitions online now, rather than having them physically signed and submitted in council. So, you know, that will be part of the strategy, will be how we can receive electronic petitions, for example. But a further improvement could be a commitment by the council that if you receive petitions over a certain number of signatures, that they will be dealt with in a certain way. You could have something that one of the scrutiny committees, for example, monitors the number of petitions we receive and how they're responded to. So there are ways in which we can improve that going forward. And we recognise that the website and the petition scheme are two of those things where we need to improve.
So can I just come back? You know, what happens now with a petition? Because we do still get them. What happens to...
The petitions are dealt with at an operational level. So they will be submitted outside of council, either to the relevant head of service or the cabinet member if they involve any policy issues. And they are dealt with in the same way as any other operational matter. But what we don't have is any reporting mechanism that confirms how and when those petitions were received and what, if any, response was given to the petitioners. So I think that's where we need to have a more robust system of recording these petitions and a process for how we expect them to be dealt with.
So I guess from a simple thing, if everybody else agreed at the moment, we could say is, well, hold on, if members don't know about the public concerns and petitions going through, why aren't we as a committee or something being informed of petitions coming through from members of the public? And surely we could have a very simple system which reported to a committee a petition, how many people signed it, what the outcome of the petition was, as a simple step we could do. Because if we don't know, and we've been talking about promoting awareness to the council, well, if members don't know the petitions are coming in, there's no, surely if others were in agreement, that's something we could do relatively simple and say, right.
Yeah, and if committee want to make any suggestions now, Chair, as to how we receive and report those petitions, we're happy to take those on board.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit I was embarrassed by one of my constituents who was concerned about an issue and said, I wonder if we should get a petition up. And it occurred to me, you know, who, where and what would receive the petition. Yeah, clarity on that and a greater knowledge of what is being petitioned over, I think would be a benefit. But there we are.
Like I say, Chair, I mean, receiving the petitions is not an issue. You know, whether they can be handed in at reception, and then they would be directed to the relevant head of service or cabinet member. But we've got a facility whereby they can be submitted online, for example. As with the Senedd, as with Parliament, we can receive petitions online. So we'll put more information on the website about how the petitions can be submitted. Where we do need to be clearer is what happens to those petitions once they're in the system. I'm picking up on Councillor Evans' point about making members aware about the numbers of petitions that we've received and how they've been responded to.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, Kate, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. My ears pricked up when Leanne mentioned that there was a facility to interrogate the pages of the website to find out if our residents stuck with them or they gave up. And I thought this is really interesting because, you know, certainly I know I'm not alone in this. Other members here have mentioned this already this morning. They're getting complaints, you know, in our case here, particularly residents' parking permits. And yet no office, I've complained about this frequently and fed back what my residents have said when they've been trying to get one. And no officers have actually accepted that there is the slightest problem with these or explained to me when I've asked for further details why this has suddenly happened, what has changed in the system or the electronic process. So I'm really interested to find out about that, because if that is right, we should have some real-time data there about if there is a problem, if people are going away from that site being you know, distressed by the experience. And I'm very interested in about the petitions, but I would ask that we pay particular attention to online petitions. I don't know the way in which the Senedd conduct their or invite members of the public to conduct online petitions, but it strikes me you wouldn't have the checks and balances available, which would be there if it was physical, in a hand-signed petitions. And you know, there has been one comparatively recently in this area, which it was just another resident happened to mention some activity by somebody else in the area. and I suspect that it was, in fact, I know it was rather random who was signing it. So, you know, we need to take this on board, that it might not actually be, you know, they may not understand the necessary checks or qualifications for residents to sign it with a personal interest in the subject. And how do we check that, you know, the validity of those signatures and email addresses that are coming back into us? Thank you.
Okay, Phil, I've got you down twice.
Well, I'm going to make 2 points, Chair.
I see.
It's just my IT. I only want to speak myself. Thank you for that, Chair. And not to disagree with anything that anybody has said, but I'd like to go back to Mark's point about the constitution of the council. And it's something Gareth has talked to us about at previous meetings, how complex it is and how we never really reviewed what's our forefathers have put in place. And it seems as though we need to have a much more streamlined constitution. And I appreciate it's a major piece of work, but it's a piece of work that should be done, because like all legislative bodies, we're very good at passing things, but we're not very good at reviewing how this has affected previous bits of legislation. So can I flag that up as a possible area of work that needs to be done? And it won't be a short-term piece of work, but it will be something that probably the next council needs to think about. And on the point that Matthew raised about petitions, I have no disagreement with what he said there, but I wouldn't want it to be something that introduces another layer of bureaucracy that actually stops the intention of the petitioners going ahead. One of the things that's happening in my ward at the moment, residents only parking, and although we're quite close to the city centre, it doesn't seem to have had as much focus in St Julian's as it had in other areas adjacent to the city centre. And I'm being bedeviled with that, and people are putting in petitions, and it's taking maybe 2 years to answer the basic request. So I don't believe we particularly need or don't need this petition monitoring system, but what we do need is robust methods of determining the strategy that will be applied to these petitions. So, for instance, if a group of residents want residents-only parking, it seems to take a phenomenal amount of time to deal with it. And if we were to put another layer in place whereby it has to come to a committee of the council before it can go further, I would really disagree with that. Thank you, Chair.
So, Sheikh, if I could come back on both of those points. Firstly, on the issue of the Constitution, unfortunately, it is a short-term action, not a long-term. We have to do this before next May. So we will be redrafting the Council's Constitution. There's a new modular Constitution that is being drafted at an all Wales level. So we're still awaiting the latest update of that. Once we've received that, we will then be redrafting the Council's Constitution, not changing anything, but redrafting it in the current format to make it a bit more accessible in terms of the relevant sections as they relate to different parts of the council. So it's all in one area. So, for example, everything that relates to cabinet, both in terms of schemes of delegation and terms of reference, that will all be in a separate section. So we'll try and simplify that. But coming back to Councillor Whitcott's point, it's a legal document. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that in terms of its simplicity. But because of that, under the new legislation, we've got a legal obligation to actually produce a summary of the Constitution. And again, there's a new model version of that that's in circulation that will try and simplify it for people, both in terms of giving them links to the relevant parts of the Constitution and trying to explain in layman's terms precisely why the decisions are taken in that way. So we're doing both. We're going to do a complete redraft of the entire Constitution, which unfortunately is the legal document on which the council's decision-making process sort of functions. But we will then provide a an abridged version of that. Welsh Government originally thought you could do it in 2 sides of A4. We think that's optimistic, but there will be about a 10-page document rather than about 800 pages of constitution. So a 10-page document that summarises the way in which the council's decision-making processes work, and allowing members of the public to try and access those links to the constitution in a far easier way. So we're doing both, and both of those will need to be in place by next May. On the petition scheme, we're not suggesting that the petitions would have to go to a committee first before they're actioned. All we were suggesting is that there is some method of reporting back to a committee, whether it's scrutiny or some other committee, about the number of petitions that we've received and how they've been responded to, and within what sort of timescale. But we're not trying to introduce another layer of bureaucracy where it has to go to a committee first before any petition is responded to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I did say for the next council, Gareth.
Sorry, for the next council? Sorry.
In terms of the constitution, I did say for the next council, because you previously explained to us how complex our constitution is.
Oh, by May, you mean? By next May?
After May, for the next.
We will need this in place before next May, in readiness for the first council AGM in May.
But you're not suggesting that the constitution will be amended or simplified by next May?
Yes, it has to be in accordance with the legislation. We're not going to change the constitution, just the way in which it's drafted, and we'll make sure that everything that's been updated over the last 15-20 years to make sure that, just to give it a sense check, to make sure that all the cross references are correct. So we're not changing the way in which the council operates, but the look and feel of that constitution will completely redraft it, and that has to be completed before next May, and the summary document has to be in place before next May, because that's what the legislation requires.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I take it, Mr. Price, that the constitution will really, in some ways, always be an ongoing process. There will always be tweaks and things that will need to add it as work progresses.
Again, a bit like the participation strategy, it's intended to be a dynamic document, but hopefully that will not change as often as the participation strategy, which is more about improving the way in which we engage with the public. The Constitution is more about your legal arrangements and your governance arrangements in terms of how decisions are taken. Now, yeah, I mean, this committee will keep that under review, and if at any time there are changes in rules of procedure or improvements in the way in which the council takes decisions, then we will update the constitution accordingly. All we're saying is, obviously, between now and next May, it's a mammoth sort of task just to record the way in which the current decisions are taken. But Councillor Horain is correct. I mean, obviously there will be a new council, new administration after May. They may want to change things in terms of rules and procedure and how that governance system works, in which case we will then update the constitution accordingly.
Right. Well, all done on that?
Well,
Yeah.
well, I did put my hand up, actually, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, you have. Sorry, Mark, I didn't notice it.
Okay, right. It was just to say, you know, I mean, I appreciate what Gareth says about the legalities, and to be honest with you, if I didn't know that, then I shouldn't be doing the job that I do. But anyway, that's another discussion. But what I'm really talking about is presentation in terms of things, for example, can be presented as flow charts and bullet points. You know, you can have a sort of user-friendly thing like that, but you could also have a sort of user-friendly video presentation. There's a guy on. There's a guy. So I'm getting a bit of feedback here. No, but there's a guy on Twitter, and he goes by the name of Femi, and he's often producing. I mean, he has got an axe to grind, and admittedly, I watch him because I tend to sort of agree with him about things like the EU and so on and so forth. But his presentation method is very, very good. and it's user friendly, and it explains things to people in a very user friendly way. And that really was all that I was getting at in my previous comment.
Right.
Yes, I agree with that entirely, Chair, and I think it'll become perhaps more apparent when we bring these documents back to you, so you can look at them. That, as Leanne was saying, you know, once we've reformatted the participation strategy, you'll see a lot more there in terms of flowcharts and diagrams and visual aids, if you like, in terms of presentation. And it'll be the same with the guide to the Constitution. It's a bit like legislation, Councillor Whitcomb. Obviously, you know, we can't simplify that because that's the legal basis on which we take decisions. But in terms of this summary document, it's a bit like if you imagine the corporate plan. Now, in terms of trying to make it user friendly and more understandable for members of the public, and that's the way we'll draft a summary document. So you expect lots more diagrams there and flow charts and visual aids, if you like, in terms of how that decision making works. So we'll certainly take that on board, and that's the intention, is to produce something that's a bit more visual, if you like, and self-explanatory.
Thanks, Gareth. Incidentally, I was reaching down then to plug my computer in, which is about to switch off. But at least what happened in when I appeared representing someone in court the week before last, which was my chair collapsed online, and I sort of vanished out of sight. At least that hasn't happened today, anyway.
Right. Well, I think we're all done. Yeah. No further comments. Certainly a lot to look forward to over the next few months, and you know, Godspeed the plough. I mean, you've got a 1,000-page constitution at present. I mean, it must be quite something to knock that into a user-friendly shape. All the very best. Right, next item.
So, Chair, can I just clarify? We've done a lot of talking as usual this morning. Can we actually have some agreement or not about whether we can move forward sort of like straight away when it comes to petitions, and potentially the Democratic Services Committee, a report being submitted of what petitions are being sent in, the numbers and the outcomes as an action, if others were in agreement?
Yeah, I think we are in agreement.
Yeah, I agree. Councillors should be aware of all petitions which lodged with Newport City Council.
Yeah.
How they do that, whether it's just an email to councillors that a petition has been lodged, then fair enough. I'm happy with that.
Chair, rather than you take an instant decision now, maybe when we report back in January, we can bring some options to you as to how that could work. Because, I mean, yeah, one of the suggestions could be that Democratic Services Committee gets an annual report, a bit like, you know, in terms of annual complaints and compliments, that sort of thing. The other way of doing it would be for each of the service areas to pick this up as part of their service planning. So the performance scrutiny then would pick it up as part of the service plans. So it would be just another reporting issue then on operational service plans about how many petitions those service areas have received, when they received them, and how they replied. So that's another alternative that we could look at. So maybe rather than take an instant decision now, if we report back to you in January about what the options are, and then you can take a more informed view then.
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, if possible, we'll do that, please, I think. Yeah. Okay. Right. Right. What's next, Mr. Price? We've got the presiding officer, yeah?
Yeah, well, this is a follow-up. This follows on from what you were just discussing. It's Leanne's second presentation in terms of where we are with some of those constitutional updates. Mm-hmm. So Leanne will take you through another presentation now.
Thank you, Leanne.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So this is, I mean, a lot of the thunder has been stolen from the discussion, I will be honest. So I'll cover the first section and then hand over to Gareth for the last section of this. So as we've discussed, there is a requirement to update the council's constitution. This is part of the Local Government and Elections Act 2021. And again, we will have to have something in place ready for May next year. So as you're aware, the Constitution sets out how the council operates how decisions are made and the procedures that make sure those decisions are efficient, transparent and accountable to local people. Some of this is dictated by the law, so the legislative requirements, and then other parts of the constitution are a matter for the council to choose. The current constitution is divided into 16 articles that sets out how we manage the council's business, and then there's more detailed procedures and codes of practice included under that as part of the document, hence in part why it is such a long document. So it is periodically reviewed and amended by the council. Sometimes that might take place, so the decisions are made, but there's a slight delay in updating the website version, again in part due to the complexity and length of the document. In preparation for our full review, we have recently just completed a matching up exercise just to make sure that all the current sections were in alignment with any changes that had previously been made. And then there is that requirement to do a much larger piece of work to update the constitution to reflect the new act. So the act requires us to publish a constitution that reflects the new legislation. As Gareth has mentioned, there is a draft model version of this which has been shared, and we're also required then to publish the accompanying guide to the constitution, and that's the link to the participation strategy. So taking on board committee members' comments about how to present that and make that as accessible as possible. And then this will be required to be published ready for May next year. Gareth, are you happy for me to hand over to you at this point?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so members will be familiar with this. They considered a report about whether to move to a presiding member approach, I think a few years back, probably 3-4 years ago. We're conscious of the fact that as part of the review of the constitution, as part of the move, particularly to hybrid meetings, lots of other councils in Wales now are reviewing this decision. So we just thought we put it before you today for you to review your previous decision in terms of whether you think it's appropriate to consider a presiding member model going forward. And this slide just summarises some of the information that we put before Democratic Services Committee a few years back. And it basically involves creating a separate member, presiding member, that would chair council meetings. If you remember, this was something that was introduced in the Local Government Democracy Wales Act by Welsh Government, because the view was that obviously chairing council meetings going forward as part of the modernised council agenda involved a different skill set maybe to the civic role of mayor. So you had the option there as a council of actually creating a separate senior responsibility role within the council for a backbench member, a non-member of the cabinet, to chair council, and that would then leave the mayor to discharge just the civic role of the first citizen. So that was an option. And I just mentioned there in passing, I'm not sure whether members are aware of it, but because of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, we've actually resubmitted. We applied a few years ago to actually upgrade the council's mayoralty into a Lord Mayor. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful all those years ago, but we've had the opportunity now to rebid for that. So I think last week, Leanne, we actually put in a formal submission to be considered for that. So hopefully we'll know next June. But I mean, clearly, if the mayoralty is to be upgraded and the mayor is going to become a Lord Mayor, then there may well be more demands on that person's time as well. So for all of those reasons, we just felt it was appropriate just to throw this into the mix, if you like, and see whether Democratic Services wanted to reconsider this issue, and whether they felt going forward as from next May, particularly with the move to hybrid meetings, and the different skill set that you really need to chair those hybrid meetings, whether you feel that the time is right to move to this new model of governance. More and more councils in Wales have gone over to this system where there's a specialist chair of council with a particular skill set, and that person could hold office for a number of years to build up that level of expertise if that's what the council felt was appropriate. So yeah, just really throwing it in the mix, Chair, and opening up for discussion as to whether you feel that's it's worth reconsidering that that option.
Before we do that, Gareth, you did mention, I believe, that this would be a paid post, so it would be an additional paid post. Is it one or two? Because there's talk of a deputy speaker, isn't there? Right.
Yeah. The presiding member is paid. Yeah. So I put that in the slide there. It will carry an additional senior salary. But the deputy presiding member won't carry a senior salary.
I see.
So yes, were you to agree this, then it would require an additional sort of senior salary in addition to the numbers that you've got now. But you have that capacity. We're not up to the maximum level of senior salaries that you can pay, but it would be an additional cost. I think it's about 25,000, just over £25,500 for next year. The other difference, I suppose, with the current role as mayor is that because you're separating out the role of chairing council now, there would be no impediment to, say, a cabinet member becoming the mayor, because at the moment cabinet members have to stand down if they want to take up the mayoral role in terms of seniority, because the law says that a cabinet member cannot chair council. Whereas if you separated out the chair of council role, then members of cabinet who qualified on seniority could still fulfil the civic ceremonial role of the mayor without having to stand down. They wouldn't qualify for an extra salary, but it would just enable them to qualify on grounds of seniority. So yes, there would be a financial consequence if you went down this route.
Would the deputy have any pay at all? Or
No.
So they always see. And if
the deputy would only step in if the presiding member was not present in council. It literally is just a fallback role if that person was unable to chair council. So it doesn't carry any payment, any additional responsibility allowance at all.
Mm-hmm. And forgive me, I'm hogging this a little bit. It's a very bad, Chairman. But if say cabinet members could then become mayors, that we have a lot of cabinet members that held on to their cabinet positions and didn't take the advantage of the opportunity of becoming a mayor. Could they then come in the list to become mayors of Newport?
Not those whose turn has already passed and they've waived the right to become mayor. Those who've deferred, and we've had people who've deferred their mayoralty for a number of years, that's different. But cabinet members who've declined altogether, then they've lost their turn completely. So this isn't a way of going back and revisiting the seniority list.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear.
Oh, okay, thank you for doing that. Right, well, there's a lot to dwell on there. Committee, what do you think? Who's first?
I've put my hand up, Chair, again.
Have you? I haven't got you. Where are you? I haven't got you, Mark. But yes,
in the chat box.
I've got Trevor again. Have I? Just.
Yeah. No, yeah. I pressed the wrong hand button. I pressed the one above.
Ah, here we are. Oh, yes. Okay, I see you on the previous thing. Well, all right then, Mark, and then Trevor. How's that?
Yeah, I got no problem, Chair. If Trevor wants to go first.
Gosh, come on then, Trev.
I'm happy with the system which is in place at the moment. Gareth mentioned about if we did go to the Lord Mayor position, that the call on that Lord Mayor would be greater than it is at the moment. But then again, we have a deputy mayor, which could also step into that role as council presiding officer, or whatever you like, the officer responsible of sitting in the mayoral position. So, to be quite honest, I don't see the point in giving or making another level of another £25,500 just for the sake of doing it, because we have that position already available in regards to a deputy to step in if the Lord Mayor has a volume of work, which obviously it's likely to be, but there's no guarantee it will. So I'm happy with what is on at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Okay. So, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I respectfully disagree with Trevor, because I was deputy mayor quite a long time ago, going back about 12 years actually, and it's not because of my experience then, but I think there are all sorts of reasons why we need to modernise the process. You know, we can't sort of cling on to it just because it's tradition. And the fact of the matter is that that it is a definite skill set to chair a meeting, and it's a different skill set to the one where you're actually representing the council at public events. If you're attending public events, it's a non-contentious thing, that you're presenting an outward face on behalf of the council, and you're representing all the members right across the chamber, and it's very much a civic thing, in the way that, I mean, on a much grander scale, the Queen's role is non-political and is ceremonial. So politics should be put to one side. The problem with if that person is chairing a council meeting is that that they do have to make political decisions, and it's a highly contentious role at times, and it's a completely different nature of role to the the other side of it. And a couple of things have concerned me, that some members who become mayors are quite daunted by, and some people have been put off by the thought of chairing meetings. They're happy to be backbench councillor, but they don't want to be put in a position where they have to chair a meeting. And the sort of big guns in the council are experienced politicians. Some of the people on the backbenches are not, and they really don't want to do it. And that view has been expressed to me on a number of occasions by people who have become mayor. And we've also seen it in terms of some people really can't handle it. So I think it's a job which requires training, and it's a job which requires the development of expertise, in which you haven't got the you haven't got the time to do that as under the present system if you become mayor. I would also say that, and I'd say it to Trevor, but anybody else who takes a similar view, that I think we really do need to consider. We're a city. We do need Lord Mayor status in order for us to carry weight, really, on a par with Cardiff and Swansea at the very least, which the mayoralty arguably doesn't at the moment. And in order to do that, I think there is a strong argument for the mayor being a full-time effectively a sort of a full-time operative or representative who only focuses on the outward presentation of the council and doesn't get involved in the internal chairing of meetings. So I think there's a very strong argument for that, and I will actually go so far as to say that I think if we don't go down this path, I think it's highly unlikely that we would succeed in our bid for Lord Mayor status. Just one last point, Chair. Sorry, I have been talking for a while, I know. And the other point is that you mentioned the salary. Well, I don't mean any disrespect, but it really is, in comparison to a 270 million odd pound budget. And if you're talking about, it's important for us and for people to see that the council chamber operates efficiently and fairly, and that the person in the chair has the relevant expertise. And that's not being disrespectful to those who've done a fine job as mayor or in the past. But it's important that we often get into really quite pathetic arguments about piddling amounts of money, to be perfectly honest with you, really a couple of tens of thousands of pounds compared with a 270 million pound budget. And I think it's worth the price in order to ensure that things are done properly. So those are my thoughts anyway, Chair. Thank you.
Kate.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I think Mark has raised many of the supporting points which I would want to make as well. I think it is a complete, a few years ago, in fact, when this was probably first discussed, we never foresaw a time when the nature of council meetings would change to the extent which they have now. It does require a different skill set. It does require training. And we do have the capacity, if the finances are a factor in this, then we do have the capacity at the moment to find that extra salary. So I would certainly support the position which Mark holds on this. Thank you.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just sort of continuing really, but a couple of points which Mark made, which I think sort of go over again is being on a backbencher. I think sort of when I came into the council, sort of, the chair inside of the mayor, sort of, I honestly didn't know sort of you had to do, and I think it does put people off, which I think is unfair because there's other skills out there which we've all got, all different skills, but chairing may not be one of them for some of us, and I feel sort of that does put people off, and I think also now we are going to hybrid meetings. I think that the skills and the challenges are different to a few years ago, and if I'm being honest, recent meetings have sort of shown that a little bit, and that's not down to anyone. It's just the role has changed. I would also sort of say that this would actually free the mayor up to do sort of what I believe was the mayor's duty when I came on board, and hopefully when we come out of these times, the mayor will have a lot of appointments to go to, and also if we go to Lord Mayor, even more so then. I think also going back to sort of when you become the mayor, what I've seen, and this is just my observation, and I don't think it's unfair because I think it'd probably be for myself as well. It takes a while for the mayors to get into this and get the skills and learn the skills. It takes time. And for me, sort of the mayors sort of I've sat with, their last quarter or their best quarters with the meetings. And I don't think that's unfair. I think that's just a natural progression. But I think if we had one person dedicated this, that they would have the skills from day one, which I think are crucial. And I think Gareth mentioned it, that other councils are changing direction on this as well, or may not use the word changing direction. Sorry, Gareth, but are looking at this as well and moving forward. And I think regarding the salary, I believe, and I could be wrong, that there's 18, I think it's 18 senior salaries available, and we're not hit that, so it's already sort of budgeted in, or there's money for this anyway to an extent. So sort of for me, as I said, I think Kate touched on it 3 or 4 years ago. I could possibly see why the decision's made. Now we've changed, we moved, and if we want the Lord Mayor If we want that to come in, we need to get this through and discuss it more. So that's just my view. Thank you for the time, Chair.
It's okay. Gail.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what Mark has set out really well, actually, and clearly for us. I think just to be more precise, really, rather than repeating everything, but the point about time to develop expertise in the role is important to ensure efficiency in a high standard democratic process. And for it to be really professional, that isn't criticism of individuals. To suddenly be thrown into that, because that's what happens. You're suddenly thrown into the position and instantly trying to chair a really important, complicated public meeting, and it must be very stressful. So I consider it to be the best way forward for the city, and I say that as someone like Mark who's standing down, so I have no axe to grind in any way whatsoever. I really do think it's the best way forward for the city, and I also want to just put down my agreement for the Lord Mayor's status as well, which I think would be a great boost for the city as well. Thank you.
Matthew?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, on the first point, who took the decision for us to apply for Lord Mayor status? I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but we're talking about democratic participation, everything else like that, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, we're told that a decision has been taken, which I didn't have any knowledge of, and I don't know if any other members did. And when it comes to a presiding officer, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get somebody who's fantastic. And actually agreeing to pay somebody 25 grand a year at the moment to chair 7 meetings is not something I can support. I can understand the need for training and development, but it also raises a lot of other questions, because that will be an annual appointment. So I'm assuming technically, the ruling group, whoever it might be at the time, might not like the presiding officer and be able to get rid of them. So I'm extremely uncomfortable about that. I know the system isn't perfect at the moment, and maybe, all people who've done that position before perhaps can get additional training, but it's only for 7 potential meetings a year. And the even bigger concern is the fact that if you agree to that a cabinet member could also become mayor. And anybody who's been mayor will know that's a full-time occupation. And the thought of somebody being able to continue and not relinquish a political position to become mayor, I'm sorry, that is, a step too far, because clearly I cannot understand how a non-political role, and we should be very proud of it in Newport, how you could suddenly say, right, I'm a cabinet member, I'm going to take political decisions and become mayor. I'm sorry, that in itself is enough for me to disagree, I'm afraid.
Mark?
Yes, I mean, I think this is the problem, you see, that it's constantly seeing just trying to present it as in a pounds and pence sort of argument, really, the job that we do. And it really does undervalue the democratic process to do that. Obviously, if you were talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds to ask somebody to do this, but 25,000 is a comparatively small amount of money. And people do extremely, I mean, I again don't mean any disrespect, but a 25,000 a year salary is the bottom tier of administration in things like local government and in central government as well. And so you're talking about a very, very small amount of money for that person really to take on quite a stressful role, which they would have to properly prepare for. They would be expected to undergo training, and it's in addition to all the other things they do as a counsellor. It's not as if, oh, well, they've only got to attend 7 meetings a year, is it? I mean, they also have to do all the other things that everybody else does. as a councillor. They have to attend committees and so on and so forth. So it's on top of their job of doing that. And this constant sort of diminution of the whole thing is a bit like Oscar Wilde said, you know, about knowing the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And I think that is just completely, with respect, the wrong way to look at it. And actually, ironically, the job of chairing the council for a non-political role is highly political. So if you're talking about when the mayor chairs the council, the mayor takes highly political decisions, and there is an argument that they should be divorced from that in terms of, and that the person who does it should be able to do it. In the social media age, how often is it that we've had mayors who are attacked for the things that they do on social media, and then that can feed through as well into other kinds of more personal attack, which we've seen in the past. So I think there's an argument as well for insulating whoever is to be the mayor from that, and I can't really see whether it be a person who's a cabinet member or a shadow cabinet member or whoever it is, that they shouldn't be able to do the job of actually representing the city externally, and to focus on doing that as a sort of speciality, because the city really needs it. And that's my feeling on the issue.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come back in, I think Matthew mentioned, and absolutely rightly so, the mayor's role is a full-time occupation at the moment, and it really is with what's going on. But it will even be more so if the Lord Mayor, if it becomes a Lord Mayor. So that's going to be even more on that person. I think also that the comment about they may only have to chair 7 potential meetings. Well, these are for me, and maybe I've got it wrong, and you know, these are the most important meetings we have, the full council meetings. So I don't think it's a tick box exercise. I think it's more of I think and we've all seen videos going around on social media about other meetings and etc. And I don't want Newport to be that. I want the professionalism to come through, and by doing this, I think it will. And as I said, it's not just Newport. As Gareth mentioned, other councils have either done this or possibly moving towards it. So I think if we want to move with the times and keep Newport moving, I think this is something sort of which we should embrace.
Right. Thank you, James. Any more comments? I wonder, Mr. Price, to be honest, I think all of us who've been round the block a few times would say that we've seen a diminution of the role of the mayor's office and the amount of events that he can cover. There was a time he had a full working office and backup of a lot of officers. No criticism for the officers who are undertaking that function at present, but there isn't the depth of resources there that there used to be, is there?
There's been no diminution in role of the mayor. I mean, what we've had to reduce because of budget cuts and austerity is the amount of mayoral budget that we spend on organised events. So what happens now is that the mayor tends to attend external events rather than the events that the council pays for and organises. But there's, until we had the COVID restrictions, there was no reduction in the number of events that mayors attended or mayoral activity. So I wouldn't want to suggest the role of mayor had diminished simply because the back office support was no longer there, or rather that the council budget wasn't there to spend on mayoral hospitality or events. So we've continued with the mayoralty, Other councils, such as Torfaen, that have gone down the presiding member route, have actually abolished their mayoralty altogether, which is something that we've never even countenanced. So I don't think there's been any reduction in the role of the mayor over the years. Just a couple of points before I think Matthew comes back in. In terms of costs, I know we mentioned the £25,000 senior salary. That's not an additional £25,000 because that includes a member's basic allowance or basic salary. So the extra would be about £9,000 or £10,000 on top of the basic salary that the member would be paid anyway. So that's the first point. The other thing, on Matthew's point about cabinet members doubling up as the mayor, just want to make it clear, I was not suggesting that cabinet members could or indeed should double up as the mayor. All I was saying was that the legal impediment to that would be removed, because it was the impediment of cabinet members chairing council that meant they couldn't stand as mayor. But if you as Democratic Services were minded to make a recommendation to council, you could recommend that the mayoral protocol should continue, and that cabinet members, even if they wanted to, should not be appointed as mayor under seniority. So just wanted to make that point clear. I wasn't suggesting that would in fact happen in practice, because as Matthew correctly points out, a cabinet member role is a full-time commitment, and in future so would be the role of the mayor, particularly if the mayor was elevated to Lord Mayor status. So I just wanted to clarify those points, I think, before Matthew comes back in.
Right, fine. Another thing I'd like to have asked you, if we do get Lord Mayor status, would the office for the mayoralty have to be well, upgraded? Would there have to be more resources in staff put into that?
No, because we don't think it's necessary. Like I said, we've not removed the support for the mayor. What we've removed are the mayoral budgets, so that there's less council spend, if you like, on hospitality and events that we host. The mayor is still fully supported, although there's no single dedicated mayoral officer. You've got a number of officers in Leanne's team that will support the mayor, as well as the chauffeurs come attendants. So we haven't reduced the support for the mayor, and therefore we don't think that, even if hopefully we get Lord Mayor status, that we need to increase the back office or chauffeur support for the mayor there. We should be able to accommodate that within existing resources.
Okay, thank you. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth, for the clarification about the cabinet members, which is very useful. But the two unanswered questions was one about how did we agree for the application for Lord Mayor status, and I'm not disagreeing with it. But also a couple of other members have raised the fact that there'll be additional work being a Lord Mayor. So perhaps we could have some clarification of why, if we change the title to Mayor to Lord Mayor, there potentially be additional work, because I can't quite see how that would.
On the first point, this is a reapplication. The councillor first applied many years ago, about 2011 time for so this was a reapplication. It was an operational thing that Leanne and officers from events, tourism and regen put together. It's a bit like a bid document, so there was no decision taken. The leader of the council was briefed and was fully supportive of it, and we were encouraged by the Lord Lieutenant to put an application in. But this was just a reapplication. The council originally applied years ago, so there was no need for a further council decision in that sense. And it is just an expression of interest or bid document that we put in. So that was the first point. The second point, in terms of workload, I think it's more in terms of status and the types of events, in terms of the elevation of that role. No, I don't think there'd be any increase in volume of events or workload, because at the end of the day, we work with all the mayors, whether they're mayors or Lord Mayors, to agree a work programme and a series of events that fits in with what they want to do as mayors. Because I mean, the important thing is that all mayors enjoy their role in office, and it's not seen as a burden. So we don't want to overburden them in terms of events. So no, we're not anticipating this will be an increase in workload. It might increase their status at events and the types of events they are invited to, but it shouldn't increase the volume of events, or, coming back to the chair's point, the amount of support that they would need.
Thanks, Gareth.
James.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just a quick. First thing, I don't know if my screen's playing up, but I've still got the presentation. Has everyone still got that? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. I just threw me on the screen. So going back
to your screen. Sorry, James. Do you want to unshare your screen, Leanne? There we are.
Right.
That better?
Sorry, sorry. It just froze me sometimes. We go from this to a small screen to a big screen. So that's just me. Sorry. So then going back to the cost, when we said it's an extra cost, a lot of extra cost. We are confirmed this is budgeted and there's possibly £9,000. Did you say, Gareth? That's correct.
It's yeah, because the member would qualify for a basic salary or allowance anyway, and that's £14,000 or £15,000. So yeah, you're talking about an extra £10,000. And you're also right, we're not up to our limit of 18 in terms of senior salaries or senior responsibility allowances. So there is provision within that to pay for this additional allowance.
Thank you, Chair.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Listening to the debate, I guess what we're suggesting, or we're getting a bit concerned about, is whether the appointment might become political. And I've just, I mean, I don't know what a Lord Mayor would do extra, actually, or perhaps wear a different funny hat or something. I don't know, but you know, so I think that's a little bit of a red herring. I suppose the example of a full-time speaker, the best model to look at would be the House of Commons, and you know, just Googling the way that the speaker is elected in order to secure impartiality. I think the mechanism is the key, in line with the Constitution review. So it looks as if this is going to pass. There seems to be a majority, and I'm kind of 50-50 on that. But for the election of Speaker, candidates must be nominated or sponsored by 12 MPs, councillors perhaps, including at least 3 from a different political party to the candidate. Each MP can only be nominate 1 candidate. So if we're going to move to this, in order to show that transparency and non-bias of the person that may become, we can write that in stone in line with a review of the Constitution, whereby if somebody, so it's about self-empowerment, rather than a appointment, it's about somebody, Kate, Jason, Trevor, deciding they want that position. They then need to, this is the way it works, Gareth, you know, for the Speaker of the House of Commons. They then have to canvass support, yeah, and get people, at least 3 or 4, we could say 50% of opposition parties members, to underline their support, whereby guaranteeing the impartiality of that person, because I think that's potentially the main issue there. Or you know, the underlying current of what we're saying here is that, yeah, we can have a speaker or a presiding officer, but that might become a political appointment. And I think Matthew said, if they do something that somebody doesn't like, you can get rid of them. Well, if they're elected by a cross-section of whoever councillors might be, then that will secure that. The money, I mean, you will get like an extra 25 grand, regardless of whether it's a pittance. You know, there have been other, as somebody said, there have been other occasions where, you know, we've questioned whether 25 grand is a great deal of money. So that can't be about sort of political convenience, and suddenly now it's a pittance. So it's about the mechanism. So we're going to have it. So rather than somebody, the leader of the council, or whether he, she may be, appointing it, possibly to enhance their position, I'm sure that isn't the case, you know, it would be done on talent, then we could copy the mechanism, or Newport City Council could copy the mechanism of the House of Commons, write it into the rewrite of the Constitution, whereby somebody must self-nominate and get at least 3, 4, 50% of members of other parties to nominate them. That would be open and transparent, in line with the Welsh Government guidance, and remove it from being a political appointment. And that basically, to me, is the model that we might consider following, but, you know, rather than it being something handed out. So the mechanism is important here in order to ensure transparency. And looking at, you know, we can't argue, can we? We can't argue, can we, that the Speaker of the House of Commons is partial in any way. If you look at, you know, the previous Speaker and the current, Sir Lindsay Howe, you know, it's quite clearly they are impartial, and that is ensured by the fact that they have to be nominated and put themselves forward. Seems sensible to me. So if we're going to do it, let's do it properly, and let's not make it a political appointment.
Yeah, fair points. I've got you next, James, but I'd like to ask Mr. Price a question. Should our bid for Lord Mayor status fail, does this appointed Speaker concept fail as well?
No.
No, it's not predicated solely on the basis of the council getting Lord Mayor status. The whole justification for the split role is the different skill set, and in terms of modernising our governance arrangements going forward. So no, the justification or the reasons for having a presiding member will still remain, whether or not we get Lord Mayor status at all. That was just a bit of background information, if you like, in terms of the role of the mayor. Were this not included in their functions going forward? So that stands alone in terms of what happens. Sorry, on Councillor Evans, Chris Evans' point about the appointment process. I mean, clearly, if you go down this, or if council goes down this route, the mechanism for appointing the presiding member will be approved by council. It's a council appointment, and council could decide to put whatever restrictions it wants on that role. But I would make the point that there's no suggestion that this is a political role anyway. If you look at the role description for a presiding member, a bit like the Speaker in the House of Commons, when they are appointed to the chair of council or the presiding member role, the way in which they discharge that role in chairing in council is an apolitical role. You know, they would be no different to the mayor in that respect, in terms of not being political, not engaging in the debate, and just managing the meeting. So this is not intended as politicising the appointment by splitting it off from the role of the mayor. Far from it. This is about that skill set in managing council meetings. So just to be clear, it's not a political appointment. As for the mechanism, that's a matter for council to decide. There are lots of ways of doing that, where you have to be careful in terms of being overly prescriptive with support from opposition groups, is that effectively gives some groups the right of veto, and sometimes it can be a little bit unworkable in terms of being too prescriptive. But as for the mechanism, that's for council to agree. You know, if you took a recommendation to council and council decided this was the way forward.
Okay, James.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Gareth maybe picked out, and also going back to what Chris had said. Chris, just a couple of points. What Councillor Evans said there, sort of, there was the template there somewhere in there, but it also, what I got out of it was, we must do it properly. Yeah, I think that's hugely important for our positions. We can do it properly. But just to, I don't mean to sort of pick you up on this, Chris, but you mentioned that it's additional 25,000. It's not an additional 25,000. It's additional 9,000 or 10,000. I just wanted to make that clear. So that's all. That's all.
All right. Where are we, Chris? Where are we? You mute, Chris. Chris, you're mute. You're mute.
I was just looking now at the way the presiding officer in the Welsh Assembly is elected, and It appears to be a slightly different model, but fundamentally the same in terms of getting other people to nominate you. If you're going to do something like this, then it has to be open and transparent, and that's the whole idea of this act that we've spent a proportion of time, quite a lot of time today discussing. So I would say that, if I was in the actions from this meeting, when this is voted through, shortly, that a recommendation will be from this committee that we look at the model to elect the potential presiding officer, and a first point of reference will be the mechanism used to elect the Speaker of the House of Commons. That could be one of the points that we amplify. I mean, because ultimately, it's got to be seen to be impartial. Now, we can say that it is impartial. Well, it is impartial. But some of the suggestion has been that the current role isn't impartial when the mayor does it. Yeah, we can say that, well, you need a skill set. So in order to, it's like applying for a job, isn't it? So in order to say that you have that skill set, when you're canvassing support from members, you will say that I'm Microsoft literate. You will say that I do not share my screen inappropriately. Yeah, like we've seen in some meetings, you will say, so that will be your pitch for the job. And if we're talking about democracy, let's make it democratic, as opposed to done with a nod from whoever the leader will be at that time, which, let's face it, is the thing that will happen. Okay, so let's just do it properly, is I think what I'm saying. There's no need to come back on that, Gareth. I think you've managed to get it through anyway, so well done. As I said, where I don't understand the Lord Mayor thing versus a mayor. It's like somebody else with a funny act, but I think my days of advocating for an elected mayor was probably gone. But if you wanted to really define yourself, get an elected mayor. That would make a lot of difference. But anyway, there we are.
Any more? I think we're all done. If I could chuck my own 2 bobs worth in, I'd say the beauty of the current system that we have is that the mayor is forsworn as an individual to political impartiality in his duties, in his civic duties, and I think that swearing of impartiality then stands well. It comes across into the duty of presiding over council meetings. Yeah, I would advocate our current system, if for no other reason, just for that. And of course, you do get the natural turnover of position and turnovers of those posts, which again I think is healthy. But that's my own 2 bobs worth. Any more comments?
Could I just make a little comment there? I hope you won't mind, but it is the mayor, his or her duties.
Oh yes, pardon me. Did I get a gender in there? I did.
I think you did, but I know you're not like that. Yeah.
I was trying to unconsciously thought, no, I won't do that. But there we are.
Oh, there.
Yes, I shall refer to the mayor as they. Okay, there we are.
So we're going to have a vote then, Chair, or
is this to be voted on, Mr. Price?
Well, it needs to be a recommendation to council. So if somebody wants to move and second that you move to this model, we can include it in the minutes and recommend that to council. But yeah, someone would need to move and second it, and then you would have a vote on it.
I'll move it, Chair.
I'll second it.
All in favour?
How are you going to do this, Charles? Just put our hands up, or?
So yeah,
we have a voting. Charles, Chair, can we have a voting box put up so that it's recorded?
I think Felicity's. Are we able to send the voting app through, Felicity?
Good point. Yeah.
Yes, on its way. There we are.
Yeah, Sam's on it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops.